Hello, everyone. Welcome back to She Works podcast. Today's guest, I have Gregory Phillips. So, Gregory, can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So, first of all, thanks for having me on. Sure. I'm an author who lives in Seattle, Washington. And I just came out with my new novel, A Season in Lights, that I'm really excited about. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. It's my third novel. And again, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on as a guest. So when did you first realize you wanted to be an author?
Wow, it's been a long time. I actually wrote my first novel when I was 14. So it's something I've wanted to do for many, many years. And, there were some false starts here and there to get going, but it's definitely something I've wanted to do since a very young age, and into my adulthood it's continued to be a dream. So it's just really encouraging to have a few books published, and I really have realized that dream.
That's amazing. Wow. So where do you get your ideas from when you think of your stories?
Interesting question. They just pop into my head. Stories come to me from all sorts of places, either real life, when I see a situation or a person that inspires me, or have my own experiences, sometimes from history. Stories are just always popping into my head, and I can't possibly write them all down.
That's awesome. So what does your family think of your writing?
Well, my father was actually a novelist as well. So my family is very encouraging of my writing. They've supported it since I started at a young age. And having grown up in a literary family is definitely something that I consider as an advantage as I've started my own writing career.
I feel like our screen is skipping. Like, I can't hear you very well. Like, is it freezing on your side?
No, everything should be fine over here. There's a lot of feedback, but the camera is not freezing on my end.
Oh, okay. Okay. So is it echoing or anything?
It is, yeah. That's better.
It is. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's better now?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. I'm trying to fix this before we can go on, because it's like freezing, because people are messaging me. They're like, it's freezing. Oh, someone said hello to you, by the way. Okay, so how many books have you written, and was there a long process to you writing your books?
So each book has been really a completely unique process. And I've had 3 novels published, but I've actually written 10 or 11 novels now. Feedback is really bad. I don't know what that is, but so each book,
it's like echoing. Hold on. I'm gonna try to see if I can switch to my phone.
Okay, that might help.
Yeah. 1 second.
Okay, that might help.
Sorry, everyone, because we have like a lot of people listening in. Okay. Okay.
I think.
Now, can you see me?
I can see you. Yes.
Okay.
Still echoing.
That's better.
There's still a delay. Maybe it's, I don't know. It sounds like maybe it's better now.
Okay, now I can hear you and I can see you, and it's not freezing.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So as far as how the books come together, I would say most of my books it really takes several years to write. An initial first draft maybe takes a year or two for me, but then there's a lot of process that has to happen after that. I like to let a book sort of rest after I've written the first draft so I can come back to it with fresh eyes. So A Season in Lights, I originally started back in 2015, and it took a little bit longer than some of the others just for the full story to come together. And then ultimately, I rewrote the final section of the book just last year to tie into current events. So for this one, I felt like it was a good story, but there was always something that just wasn't quite ready about it. And the way the beginning of the pandemic unfolded gave me an opportunity to, I think, bring this book to a higher level, to a place where it's a much better story now than I think it was when I first started it.
So can you tell our listeners a little bit about your new novel?
Sure. So again, it's called A Season in Lights, and you can see it up there behind me. And it's a story of passion, ambition, and escape in the colorful, artistic underworld off Broadway in New York City. And it's a story of people really just trying to make it in music and dance. There's a lot of stories, a lot of books, movies, things like that about, Broadway and people making it in Broadway and having their dreams come true and all those things. I wanted to touch on the people who are maybe not making it to the big stage, maybe not quite realizing their full dreams, but sort of living the life of their dreams anyway, in the small stages, the back alley theaters and things like that. Wow. And the story tells two stories in parallel. One is of a contemporary day dancer, and one is of a piano player who comes to the city in the 1980s and then is still there in the contemporary section. And the two stories just paint a different picture of the experience of artists in the city. And then it culminates with the beginning of the COVID pandemic, the shutdown of Broadway, and the effect that this had both economically and emotionally on performers whose careers were changed forever by these things that have happened in the last year plus.
That's amazing. Wow. We have someone on here. She said she loved A Season of Lights, or In Lights. She said she loved your novel. Can you see the comments on there?
I can't, but thank you to whoever that was.
And then she said it's truly beautiful. Her name is Annie McDonald.
Oh, hi, Annie.
But she said it's truly beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Annie, and thanks for listening in.
So, what inspired you to write this novel?
So, I'm actually a dancer and a musician myself, and I lived in New York City for a little over a year and danced in a couple off-Broadway shows. And that experience for me, along with the other dance and music experiences on stage I've had, both in Seattle and a few other places, it was sort of the loose inspiration for this novel. The novel isn't based on my own experiences, but it certainly draws on them. And it draws especially off of that experience of being in the small theater settings and the camaraderie of the backstage experience and all of that, as well as just my experience living in New York City for a little over a year, which sort of mirrors the character Cammie and her experience living in the city. So those were really the inspirations behind it. And then once I kind of got into it, then the characters themselves really just took over and told me the story.
That's amazing. Like I've never been to New York, but I've
Mm.
heard stories about it, like the competition, like to
Mhm.
make it big out there, it's really competitive and you really, really have to work really hard at what you want out there.
Yeah. One thing I loved when I was there is just feeling the energy of the people because everybody's doing something there. Everybody's there for a reason and they're trying to, make it in a career or make it on stage or just there's just this sense of purpose from the people there that I just found really intoxicating.
Mhm. That's amazing. I feel like everyone is unique. Like they all have something that they can bring into the world, but some of them just don't realize it yet.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's true of people everywhere.
yes, I agree. So, as a child, did you always want to be an author when you grew up?
I did.
You
Yes.
did.
Yep.
Wow,
So,
really?
yeah, doing what I wanted to do when I grew up. How rare is that?
Yeah, wow. I remember I wanted to be building trains, but then I wanted to be a journalist and I'm doing it.
Good for you.
So what in your opinion, what do you think makes a good story?
A good story is one that draws the reader fully into the experience of the character,
Mhm.
where they feel the character's emotions as the character goes through this, whether it's fear or love or um, pain or joy, that the character's emotions transfer to the reader. I think that's really the sign of an effective story.
I agree. I agree. So, who are a few of your favorite authors and have any of them inspired your novels?
Yes, yes. Uh, Boy, there's so many that I love. I've always really loved Steinbeck. I
Oh,
think Steinbeck, just his characters are so beautifully painted that he does all those things that I just mentioned. He's one of, if not my favorite author. Uh, Around the same time, Hemingway and Fitzgerald have both been authors that have really inspired me. One of my current favorite authors that I've been reading all her books is Jeanette Winterson. I think she's just absolutely fantastic. Uh, so those are a few that come to mind. There's so many good authors, but yeah,
wow.
those are ones that I feel like reading their books. I I go back and chew on passages and think, oh wow, if I could write like this or describe a scene or a character like this, it would be very effective. So they're authors that I not only enjoy but learn from.
Yes, yes. I like that. So have you made being an author a full-time career?
No, I
You-
have a day job, and I've I'm definitely at peace with that situation because it's so hard to make a career as a full-time author. And by having a separate day job that, pays the bills and supports my writing, really, I feel like I'm able to just think of my writing as a labor of love and as an art. And I never want it to stop being art to me, first and foremost. So, yes, it would be nice if, you know, that was one day possible, but I'm not, that's not the goal of my writing. The goal is to create my art that I can then share with the world.
That's amazing. So how do you process and deal with negative and positive reviews?
Honestly, I rarely read them.
You really? Oh
Yeah.
wow.
I mean, well, positive ones I enjoy reading, but um, I'm not somebody who's going to go and read all of my Amazon reviews because it's especially the negative ones. I mean, I welcome constructive feedback certainly, but I just don't think it serves me to read negative reviews. just, why stress yourself out over that?
someone someone commented and she said, "What?" That's funny. So
No,
a
if
lot
somebody
of
leaves like a 3-star or 2 or lower review, I just don't read it because, why?
a lot of authors like a lot of authors they will read their negative reviews and then that some of them take it as can I learn from this negative review, but some of them they're just like I'm just like they're gonna ignore it like what you said,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
some of
Well, I
them are
feel like
like
if it's an actual, professional reviewer or somebody uh, um, who's a critical reviewer, then yes, I will read that and I will look for, feedback that I can improve. But if it's just a random person on Amazon who didn't like the book, I don't need that.
I agree. So what was your hardest scene to write and why?
Oh, that's a good question. So I think that for this novel, there was a series of scenes in the middle section of the novel that dealt with the family dynamic between the main character, Cammy, and her sister and her mother. And the dynamic between them, they all deeply love each other, but there's some real stress and pain points between them. And one scene in particular, I rewrote it and kind of tweaked it and reordered things quite a few times to feel like I could get it where it was effective, believable, and ultimately, I hope, moving for the reader to see these characters interacting where there's stress, but they're working through it, but not necessarily in the most mature way. And so, yeah, I would think for this novel, that was probably the hardest scene to write. All the Broadway show scenes they just flowed like butter. They were easy.
That's amazing. Yeah, like so how do you celebrate when you finish a novel?
Good question, because the question, as if any other authors are listening, is when is it really finished? Is it when you hold the book in your hand? To me, that's really when I celebrate, when I first hold the final book in my hand. But when you finish a first draft, I find that sometimes I'm not even really sure if I've finished the draft yet. It feels still like a real work in progress. Or when you send the book off to an editor or the publisher, because then they're going to come back and tell you all the changes they want. So it's not done. But once, and I actually remember with this book, when I finally held the book in my hand, I was texting with a friend that this felt very surreal to have had this project that's been 6 years in the works and then to hold a physical book finally. That's the moment to celebrate. But I don't usually have a big celebration. It's kind of a quiet moment because it's a reflective moment of this has been so much work, so much love going into this, and now it's finally done. It's just again, surreal is really the best word for how it feels.
That's good. So what advice would you give to help others who want to pursue a writing career?
First and foremost, be a storyteller. If you're just starting, don't worry too much about the making every sentence perfect, how it's going to go, how many pages you need to write per day. Just tell your story and the rest will fall in line. And if you get discouraged, don't think that that's a reason to stop. It's just, maybe take a pause, but let the story come back to you. Let the story inspire you. And again, I think the rest will usually take care of itself.
That's amazing. So this is a question outside of the questions I had for you.
Okay.
So I'm writing my first novel, but my
Okay.
problem is focusing on the story, like the main plot. Like
Mhm.
I go off subject and like every paragraph will be a different like subject, and my mom is like, what are you trying to tell us? Like and my brother said the same thing. They was like, it's kind of all over the place. I don't know why my mind thinks like that, but it does.
Yeah.
But so how would someone like me whose mind is all over the place, what advice would you give them? Like, is there a YouTube channel they can follow? Like, they give them advice on how to do it step by step? Like, how does it work?
Right. Uh, Nothing that simple, but in what you described, I would say if it's your first draft, let it go on those tangents. You know, you'll want to bring it back eventually, of course, but those could end up being really interesting counterplots. So with a first draft, don't overthink it because you can always clean it up. If you have an idea of the full story and the kind of the final outcome of it, bring it back, write those parts as well, but let the tangents happen, because that's where in editorial you can cut the ones that don't work, keep the ones that do, and you might discover something really valuable in those tangents that become a major part of the book.
Oh, okay. That's great advice. I'm definitely gonna think about that when I write my first novel because I'm all over the place. so, so what do you enjoy doing when you're not writing?
So, as I mentioned before, I'm a musician and a dancer. So I love dancing in particular is really one of my passions. I'm a tango dancer, salsa dancer, pretty much any partner dancing I enjoy. And that's probably the thing I most enjoy doing when I'm not writing. Music, I love playing my piano. It's been during the pandemic, that's been a real joy to just have that. I've been learning a lot of new things on the piano, so that's been really fun, especially when working on this book, and the character of Tom is a piano player, and so that's a dual interest in here. Other things I enjoy, I love being outdoors, hiking. I live in Washington State, where it's just incredibly beautiful, and there's so much to do. So I'm pretty active. There's a lot I enjoy. I have my hands in many projects and hobbies and things like that.
That's amazing. So, who or what inspired you to become a accomplished tango dancer and musician?
So music, I grew up in a very musical family as well as a literary family. So my parents encouraged music from a young age, and it's just been something that I've always loved. As far as dancing, it's hard to say exactly what got me into it. Just the first time I saw ballroom dancing, and especially tango dancing, and heard the music, I got hooked really quickly. And that was when I was in college, in my early 20s, and I've just been doing it ever since. I just think it's such a beautiful form of movement. It's such a great way to connect with another person, and with a community. Many of my close friends are dancers, so it was a very quick inspiration, that just seeing it, becoming immersed in it, it just kind of took over from there.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to thank you so much for coming on my show and allowing me to interview you today about your novel
Yeah,
and
thank you
dancing.
so much.
You have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Hey everyone. So I just wanted to make a conclusion. If you would like to purchase Gregory's novels, you can go down to the link. It's right there. And you can purchase his novels and you can see what other things he enjoys doing. Thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you all have a great day.